We got Steve Helwick on the line from Hustlebelt and Underdog Dynasty to break down the Group of 5 bowl games as we get cranked up on December 17th. We've got the Tail Greeter Cure Bowl with Coastal Carolina, familiar name. They've broken onto the scene. A lot of people more familiar with Coastal Carolina football than they were 2 years ago at 10-2 this season, coming off the one-loss 2020 campaign. And Northern Illinois, Steve, extremely impressive. You set us up for that MAC championship game matchup against Kent State. They pretty much dominated the game in finishing at 9-4.
Yes, Coastal Carolina was really America's team in 2020. It felt like it was a team that came out of nowhere. They'd never been to a bowl game before. They'd never had a winning record since joining the FBS, and they finished the regular season undefeated, and they had a fun option style offense. And they had that game against BYU where they scheduled it just a couple days in advance. And everyone, I think, really fell in love with Coastal Carolina when that game got college game day atmosphere. And then it came down to the final play, which was a goal line stand reminiscent of the Rams-Titans Super Bowl. But this year, Coastal Carolina, they were 10-2. But if you look at Coastal Carolina's schedule, they did not beat a single bowl-eligible team this year. Like, they beat the teams that they should have. And their losses were they lost to App State 10-2 on a Wednesday night. That was on a game-winning field goal. Their other loss was a 2-point loss to Georgia State, who's 7-5. Georgia State had a tough non-conference schedule, which explains their record a bit. But Coastal Carolina also had to operate without their starting quarterback, Grayson McCall, in that game. So McCall's only lost one game this season. And McCall is the model of efficiency as a quarterback. He had a 73% completion percentage this year, 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And if you look at each of his individual games, there were several times where he had 80% or better completion percentage in a game this year, including a game where he finished 13 of 13 with 212 yards and a touchdown against ULM. So McCall is a great, efficient quarterback. And although his rushing numbers are a bit down from last year, I said he likes to run the option a lot. One thing I like about McCall is he is like an artist when watching him run the option. Just the way he can time his pitches, the way he makes his reads. It's really impressive to see from a quarterback to show that in an option game, which is kind of phased out of college football a bit in the past few years. So I give Grayson McCall a lot of credit on that. And one other player to watch in this game for Coastal Carolina is their tight end, Isaiah Likely. He reminds me a lot of Jermaine Gresham, former Oklahoma tight end who had stops with the Bengals and Cardinals in the NFL. Isaiah Likely is one of the top tight ends this year in receiving yards and touchdowns. He had 816 yards and 10 touchdowns, and he averages 16 yards a catch, which is a lot for a tight end. And he finds a lot of openings down in seam routes in the center. And Isaiah Likely is also a pretty good blocking tight end, which helps bolster that option offense. So I think that Likely is another name to watch. And just to throw in one more for good measure for Coastal Carolina, this is such a senior-heavy team. A lot of these contributors on offense and defense are seniors, and that's how they kind of peaked last year, and then everyone got eligibility left. But someone on their defense, which has really stepped up this year, is not a senior. He's a true freshman, and that's defensive end Josiah Stewart, who was the breakout player for this team this year. He led the team with 13 sacks and 16 tackles for loss as a true freshman at the defensive end position. They have a lot of veteran talent on this defense, like Teddy Gallagher and Alex Spillum, but it was a true freshman that was really anchoring that pass rush, had 3 forced fumbles on top of that. He made a mark early in the season in that Kansas game with 4 sacks. So Stewart's going to be a name I'd like to watch, but he's going up against a Northern Illinois offensive line, which is tied with Michigan for 3rd in the nation and fewest sacks allowed. So NIU has pretty sturdy offensive line, and that's one thing that helps the Huskies win a lot of games because NIU doesn't force much pressure themselves. They don't collect much turnovers, but by playing smart football on the offensive line, that's one thing that really helps the Huskies offense thrive. In the MAC championship game, Northern Illinois kind of reverted to earlier this year where they didn't really need to pass that much to win the games. Rocky Lombardi kind of relied more on the running game, and Jay Ducker, Clint Ratkovich, and Ontario Brown kind of took that over and pushed it down Kent State's throat in that game for a 41-23 victory. So NIU has shown the ability to be multidimensional on offense. When they want Rocky Lombardi to air it out, he can do that. He got school record 532 passing yards this year. But a lot of times, Northern Illinois just prefers to keep it grounded, and that explains why this Huskies team is 5th in the country in rushing yards. Coastal Carolina is not far behind at 6, so we're going to see a lot of rushing in this game, and so this one might go by in an instant in the Secure Bowl in Orlando.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it seems like Coastal Carolina might be a little bit better prepared to stop the run, at least statistically. NIU, while they rush it, top 5 in the nation, are bottom 10 in the nation in defending the run. Points per game, number 107, giving up 33 points per game. But again, as you mentioned, the Coastal Carolina schedule has to be taken into consideration. Did not defeat a bowl team with a 10-win season is an interesting thought, but they certainly, in going back to last season, are a little bit more battle tested than that would indicate. So it's the Cure Bowl, Coastal Carolina, and Rocky Lombardi in Northern Illinois.